Okay, let's get started. For the sake of time, we'll jump right in. So, welcome to our Ask a Greenhouse Expert webinar series hosted by Ceres Greenhouse Solutions. Today, we will be exploring the subject of biophilic home design, Natur house, houses with greenhouses over them, attached greenhouses, and all things residential greenhouse related. My name is Miriam, and I will be the host for today's event. We also have Haley here to help with facilitating questions and keeping us on topic. And of course, we have our regular panelists, Josh and Marc. They are thrilled to be exploring these topics with you all today. In order to maximize our time together, I am going to skip over their bios and introductions. So if you'd like to learn more about their roles and backgrounds, please check out one of our past webinars on our YouTube channel or visit our website. Haley will post the links in the chat. We invite you to ask questions at any given point in the Q&A section. Please keep the questions relevant to the topic at hand, or we will probably skip over them. Also, this event is being recorded and will be available on demand in a follow-up email and on our YouTube channel and website. Before we get into it, we have a quick disclaimer. The information provided during this webinar is for general informational purposes only and is based on the expertise and knowledge of our greenhouse specialists. The advice and recommendations provided are intended to assist attendees in understanding various greenhouse systems. Participants are encouraged to consult with a qualified professional or conduct further research to address any specific concerns or requirements they may have. The hosts and organizers of this webinar are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information presented. So, with that, let's jump right into our questions. And we are going to start with a pretty broad question, and that is, what are the benefits of integrating a greenhouse into your home design?
You go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Marc and Josh talking about stuff.
Our favorite time of the week.
Our
I mean,
favorite
what
time
are you
of the
talking about? It's of the months. I mean,
it's definitely the most relaxing time of the month.
that's right.
House and greenhouse is just been a big thing that I think has slowly been happening in Europe over the past some years, and we are starting to feel a lot more pressure here domestically that this is a trend that people are really interested in and want to learn about and design into their home projects.
Yeah. It's not only that. I mean, it's really, when you think about it, it's how we started the company, right? The very first greenhouses we built, I mean, here in Boulder, the second project we had was attached greenhouse that was allowing people to just go from the kitchen right into the greenhouse, harvest whatever they needed, and got back out into the kitchen, which really was 15 plus years ago. And those projects have always been there. That was always part of the attractiveness of growing food right where you eat it and get it from the greenhouse onto the plate, yeah, 10 feet away.
Yeah. And now from then, the idea has really evolved into something that's much more aesthetic. It's probably much more performance based as well. The idea of kind of removing your home from the exterior environment and plopping it into a different environment. And so there's a lot of really cool benefits to this concept, and I'd say kind of this new movement.
Yeah. And it's not all food related, right? It's people feeling like they want to step outside of their door and feeling like they're in a different climate. They're, at least for a little bit, have the impression that they are in their Costa Rican vacation, even though they may be in northern Canada.
Right. Yeah. And for me personally, when we think about this, it's, you can potentially spend time outside when you wouldn't normally be able to spend time outside, which maybe expands. You can have a smaller house and have a bigger feel or a bigger footprint in the winter to use space. You could grow things that you wouldn't be able to grow otherwise, depending on where you live. And in Europe, I think part of the driver was you can take an old house and put a greenhouse over it. And instead of having to remodel the house and add new windows, new insulation, you just plop this structure over the top. And now you've kind of taken care of all those things because it's not as cold. There's no wind hitting the house anymore. There's no weather hitting the house anymore. Right. So it's cool. It checks a lot of boxes. And it's really exciting for us to think about and work on in design and implementation.
Real quick, actually, we have a question already from the audience talking about someone would like to know more about the energetic benefits of house and greenhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get into that as we move forward. We'll show some photos and you know, there's different ways to go about this, and we can talk about, you know, what people are doing and what the benefits are, because it's pretty, the range is broad, and depending on what the goal is, you can do a lot or a little with this concept.
And those things can be calculated, right? It's one thing for somebody to be looking at minus temperatures, Fahrenheit, or minus 15, etc., Celsius. You know, at that point, if that's the outside temperature, it takes a lot of energy to heat your home. With relatively little effort, you can basically create a greenhouse that will keep the temperatures above freezing all year long. And that does not take a lot of energy. And then you can easily just reduce your heating bills for the areas in that which it is cold. And really, these concepts, we're talking in the US mostly on projects that are trying to keep the heat away from the house. In other places in the world, we have projects in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia where the opposite is the case. They open the door and they're out at 140 Fahrenheit or 50 degrees Celsius and more. At that, it's just not pleasant to go out that way. And so here's your opportunity to create an environment that does the opposite. And that too is provides energy savings. You don't have to worry about water coming into your building, you know, whatever other issues that are there can be reduced to make your house more livable with less energy use. Absolutely.
Josh, is there anything you'd like to add just specifically talking about the benefits of integrating a greenhouse?
No, I mean, again, I think we said it, which is like, there's this kind of lovely idea of like food's out your kitchen door. And then there's the reality of we can use certain glazings, like Marc said, to reduce 140 degrees to 90 degrees in the greenhouse. And then you're only cooling 90-degree air instead of 140-degree air. Super efficient. Also way more pleasant. And so it works, you know, there's a lot of benefits to this. And when I think about it, and I have been a lot, very few drawbacks other than like, it's more structured to build. But I'm not really finding a lot of reasons that I don't love this idea.
And of course, there's the obvious food production bit.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, the food production is there, but I think there are so many people who are affected by the lack of sunshine in the winter and get depressed. You know, that is the thing. It's real. I know I feel it. And so I moved from rainy, drizzly Germany to very sunny Colorado, where we have sun, 300 days a year. It is a happier place for me to live, but you can actually allow, even in the wintertime, to sit outside on any sunny day if you want. And even if it is not sunny, you can be sitting out at 70 degrees outside of your door and read a book and feel really warm and cozy. 70 degrees is what, 20 Celsius. It allows you to live the life that you have in the spring. And for many of us, the spring and the fall are the beautiful times of the year. that it allows you to live your life. It's not, and you see green. My wife is from South India. She complains bitterly that the last green she sees is usually somewhere in October, and then the first green she gets is in April, and she's depressed about that, right? And so for her to feel like she can go somewhere green and feel humidity, those are things that are just amazing to have the opportunity to experience all year long without having to travel anywhere and take kids out of school and all of those kind of things. So, right, it's I love that concept. I mean, I'm getting all excited about it.
Why don't we move to some more specific questions? So our next question is, what is the best way to attach the greenhouse to the house?
Yeah, so let's, we got some images to share. Let's do that. And this is just a general concept of how this can be done. And there's a lot of ways to do this.
So this is a house in the greenhouse.
This is
detached.
This is just a greenhouse, and in Scandinavia, they were just landing these greenhouses over like what were supposed to be summer homes in probably northern harsh climate places where people would go for the summer but shut down in the winter. This allows them to use it year round or move there all the time.
Yeah.
And so this was a house, and then you put a greenhouse over it. Again, we're just doing some conceptual drawings to show you. This is one of our concepts. We have a kit house where this is a slightly different variation. Some of the house walls touch the outside. It's not in the greenhouse. It's part of the greenhouse. And then this is when we get into like the real idea of what people are doing. And this is a house in a greenhouse. And some of these are like, internet images. This is in Norway, I think. A lot of these, there's shows about this you can watch now. Like Apple TV has a show called Home, and you can really like dive into this and see what this does. And right now, what you're seeing is probably a shot somewhat in the summer where it's maybe a little bit less stark about the difference in the environment. But if this was a winter shot, it would be much more obvious about potentially green in the greenhouse and no green outside of the greenhouse.
Yeah.
And that's part of when this starts to really be cool.
Yeah.
Is when the outside conditions are changing, but your inside conditions are slightly more controlled.
Where is the swimming pool?
They got like, look at this, like
but in the window. Okay.
Here's another concept. This is also somewhere in Scandinavia. It's an A-frame greenhouse, wood framed. There's a lot of variations on how this can be done. There was a question, I think, about whether or not this works in Colorado, and we can talk about glazing types and things like that. But a structure like this, like if you're in a snow-prone place, especially from 70s, 80s architecture, you used to see a lot of A-frames. I find them to be odd spaces, but they work really well with snow loads. And so something like this is a very good way to deal with the harsh winter. Snow doesn't stay on A-frames. Snow also doesn't stick to steep glass regardless.
Yeah.
But it's just an idea. Here's another one where a north wall is part of the house. And so it's an insulated north wall of the greenhouse. And then the greenhouse extends, the house is in the greenhouse. And again, you get your house in a tempered climate, and you get a yard that is protected from the elements.
Man, this is beautiful.
This picture is amazing, but I have to like, in reality, it's probably windy or something can't be perfect about it. And the greenhouse helps with the wind. And so it makes that ideal spot that maybe we all hope and dream.
Why don't we all move there?
We think this is in West Virginia. Just kidding. And then this is the one that is behind Haley right now. And this is just a closer up shot of, this is really a pretty low key standard steel frame greenhouse, probably single pane glass. It has a roof vent, and it has the house inside. A cool thing about what you can do here is when you remove snow load from the house, you can have a flat roof.
Yep.
And so you basically gain a roof deck anytime you want to do this if you want, because you don't need roof pitch for rain or snow or anything else. There is no rain, there is no snow. It's probably a little condensation depending on how you're controlling the greenhouse, but nothing like a rainstorm.
Yeah. And if you do the slope of the roof in the right way, the water will run off to the gutter on the side. There it can be collected, so you can do rainwater harvesting. You can see on this particular picture on the right side, you can see a solar thermal collector, which means they're making a hot water or warm water for your showers, for everything you need in the house. That we could think about whether or not we want that inside the building or outside the building. Putting it on the inside of the building would potentially help to make sure that it will never freeze. We'll talk more about some technologies to do that with very little energy input. But a solar thermal system in this particular design makes all the sense in the world. It's not very expensive. It's a great way to live energy efficiently. That heat can be used for, of course, personal use, or it can be used in part to heat the greenhouse space to, reasonable temperatures in the winter. So this is an all-around super good concept.
Yeah, and I will mention that we were talking earlier about this. In Sweden, there is a little bit more of an earthship, if you know what that is, take to this, where there is recycle your gray water and even recycle your black water systems that kind of make this a little more of a sealed, self-sustaining environment. We're not going into that here. We're really just talking about what it looks like to put a greenhouse onto or around your house.
We're not quite at the biosphere level.
Not yet.
I actually think, though, that might be a good segue into our next question, which is how to make living in a greenhouse affordable.
We will go.
Oh, look at this beautiful pictures.
We'll get there. We'll go here for now. This is the Ceres first take on. This is not house in greenhouse. We'll call this house with greenhouse. This is what we call the Vesta. What as we work through some of these projects, and we'll show you some of these projects that we're working on, what we're learning is that amazing house projects are expensive and not everyone can afford it. This is our take on what we've found so far, and it's ever evolving, a somewhat affordable way to build a house with a greenhouse. And so we've used insulated metal panels, which are the panels we use for our greenhouses. We've designed a house that has passive techniques like overhangs to create shade and overhangs on the greenhouse to shade the wall between the greenhouse and the house, and integrate a greenhouse to combine the two spaces. And we'll just show you, this is greenhouse and house. And this is the first one we built. This is actually in Southwest Colorado. And it's partially built, as you can see here, but the greenhouse was in full swing. And so this is, again, it's a different feel than greenhouse and house, obviously, but you still get an idea of this is your living room and this is what's happening outside your door.
Yeah.
And so you still get that harvest to the kitchen thing. You still get the green, even in the middle of the winter. And this is what your greenhouse can look like. Again, this is small. It's not like a full yard. It's very much like a room of the house, but it also provides heat for the house. And in these windows, we actually control them. We can let heat into the house. So you do get a heat source, a humidity source if you're in a dry place in the winter. And then this picture we just threw in there because you see you get outside views from the top windows if you're upstairs, and you get these kind of really verdant views from the inside. So this is an affordable way to do it. This is if you're starting from scratch, you're building a house and a greenhouse. The other way to go about this.
Wait a minute, before you
Yes.
say that, I think the idea here was to make that cheaper than a regular house would be.
Yeah, I think if you're going for both and you're starting from scratch, this is a very affordable way to get a house with a greenhouse. Maybe the most affordable
The
way.
most affordable way,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay.
I hate to say the most
Cool.
because, like, you know,
Hey, he is the one who came up with this
Anything-
together with the friends.
but anything people can figure out
Yeah,
cheaper ways
it's really,
to do things.
it's really cool.
But this is
Yeah.
a way you can like buy it and
Yeah.
build it.
Yeah.
The other, you know, cheaper way to do this, which is not this, we'll get there, but maybe this.
Yeah.
And this is just steel frame, single pane glass greenhouse with a roof vent and a shade system. And it goes over a house, or you put this up and then you build a house within it.
I mean, so these single pane glass systems, which are not super energy efficient, but certainly better than it would be otherwise, are not very expensive per square foot, per square meter. These are affordable, and probably if you take out the requirements on the house, if you're building new, and you take out the requirements for the snow load on the house, it may at the end be a wash. I don't know that will fall there exactly, but I would assume that a house that does not need to take care of the snow load and the water penetration protection, that you don't have to do any of these things and just put a greenhouse over everything, that you need to check with your local building department if they allowed you to do that. But in case that's where you want to go as a new build, you would probably be similar in a house price than you would be with a standard house. So the greenhouse doesn't add a lot. When you build on an existing house and you want to build a greenhouse over it, then it's a little harder to estimate, because what is the shape of your greenhouse? Can we do a rectangular box? Do we need to have something bigger? What is the height of the greenhouse? There, the prices just vary, and it's probably hard to make an estimation right now how much a greenhouse costs right here on this podcast. But we're happy to, if you want to just send us a concept or say, I have this house and I want a rectangular box of that size, I'm sure we can come up with some ideas of what that would cost. And we can talk about the options. And I think we haven't even started talking about single pane, double pane, no pane. No, I'm just kidding.
Can we share maybe how much the price range the Vesta is?
The Vesta,
People are curious.
put me on the spot, Haley.
Sorry.
The Vesta kit works out to about 2,000 square feet if it's the Vesta Plus, which is the 2-story that we were just showing you.
200 square meters.
200 square meters. And I believe that the kit price, we've just adjusted the windows to triple pane windows. It's becoming more passive. The envelope's getting tighter. And I think it's around $300K for the kit, which is the shell, the entire shell, everything you see here shipped to you.
Yeah, you're complicated. So what is that? 2,000 square feet, 300,000.
Yeah.
We're looking at 150
a square foot.
A square foot, or 1,500 per square meter.
Yeah.
Which seems like
roughly. I mean, these days it's pretty good.
That's a good price. I would think let's try to do that with something else. That's going to be hard.
Housing, building is expensive. There's just no way around it. And, you know, when you do something custom or very cool, it's more expensive. This was our attempt at doing something that's somewhat affordable.
I have another question to kind of, maybe this might put you on the spot too much, but do you happen to know a vague price difference between steel and aluminum?
Aluminum is significantly more expensive than steel.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think in general, it is easier for many projects to do them in steel, and most people go there because at the end, it's the actual building is cheaper. There are pre-manufactured aluminum building systems. I don't want to say trusses, but building systems that if you happen to have the right size house or right size greenhouse that you want to build, I think they can be competitive. So I'm not saying that this will be cheaper. Usually in aluminum, you can build with less material. It is, in my view, often probably nicer looking than steel. But again, you can take steel and you can powder coat it in any color. You can have any surface treatment on it. Steel can look very cool as well. So I want to say, to answer that question, aluminum is probably slightly more expensive, but it depends very much on what kind of a building you're trying to build.
And then I think we can just show what a less affordable building might look like.
But beautiful.
This is beautiful, and this is actually a project in Germany with a partner manufacturer of ours, but we like to show it. And this is wood glue framing, solar integrated solar glass, shade systems, roof venting. But you know, the look and feel of what you're getting when you're really, you know, going for it can be different. Obviously, like money talks, but the range of what can happen here between single pane glass we just showed you to the Vesta to this are pretty significant.
I mean, it's an amazing place. I went to visit. I went to where there. I was early on because I knew it was there. The owner was a little incredulous to see, what, you're coming from America to see this? And I was like, yeah, this is about one of the coolest buildings I've seen. A great restaurant, and you may want to show the outside picture too, because you can see on the right side, you can see this is an external shade system that prevents people from getting too warm when they're sitting on the south side of that building. It is expensive as the shade system goes, but it is such a thought through, well-designed product. The whole concept of the whole place is just amazing. And the food was very good too. Not that that matters here, but anyway.
Oh, it matters.
It matters.
Okay, so that's like a range. We started with affordable and ended up with less affordable, but I think it's.
I don't actually know what the final price on that building was, but it is not. It was still in the business plan of this restaurant. They were not idiots to build something that they can never pay back. This as a destination for people and this, they don't have any land around it. This is just a restaurant, a very cool restaurant, but it still fits into their business plan. So it couldn't have been outrageous, because the food is not outrageous in there.
Yeah, you know, different people have different needs, and I think it's good that we address the range of what people are looking for. So there you have it, everything from less to more. And if anyone has any follow-up questions about that, looking for some pricing, feel free to reach out. Just as a transition back to the Vesta, which is our foundational product, we have a question. When you expand the Ceres Vesta, does the second floor and greenhouse also expand? Are there limitations to the number of expansion units you add?
Yeah, so we can just do a quick discussion on that. The way we designed the Vesta is that these columns, which are the main structural columns, are in 10-foot spacing. And so the Vesta is expandable in the east to west dimension. So it could come towards us here or away from us, but not in the south to north dimension, as that would change the engineering significantly. And we have several offerings that we'll just like roll through. This is the regular Vesta. It's a single story with the greenhouse attached. This is the Vesta Plus, which is the pictures that you saw, same footprint, but taller. So it has the lofted second story. This is a 60-foot long Vesta that has a 2-car garage, which just added 20 feet, which is relatively easy to do.
60 foot is 20 meters.
And then this is what we call the homestead. And this one's actually 70 feet. And the entryway changes a little bit. It actually has a stairway in a 10-foot bay and then a mother-in-law apartment above the garage. So this is actually a 2-unit, but the concept is all the same. And we're actually doing one right now for a client where the apartment upstairs is not there and the loft just extends all the way across. So the answer is yes, the loft can extend. There is customization possible with this building, even though it kind of has a set footprint north to south, and the driver there's cost. So that's a quick Vesta. And the other thing that we can just discuss is that this one in particular, like the Vestas, but any of these can integrate solar. And when we do the math on this Vesta Plus, these 11 panels produce 109% of the power needed for the house in Colorado. So we're in a sunny place, but the idea is that this thing, not off grid, but grid tied, can be a net zero electric use house that wasn't including charging your car.
Very cool.
We did that math a few years ago.
Okay.
So if you're charging your cars, maybe you need a few more solar panels.
Okay.
And so just more Vesta questions. Another question is, how many different Vesta blueprints do you have to choose from?
Well, so that was kind of it. That was the Vesta single story, the Vesta Plus 2-story, same greenhouse, same footprint. This one's 60-foot long with garage. This one's 70-foot long with the in-law apartment and a garage. And then this is a little mini, which is basically like a just under 400 square foot living structure and about 180 square foot greenhouse. The idea was that this was a under 600 square foot ADU type thing, which oftentimes don't need a permit or need a different kind of permit. If you need to get like, the grandparents in a different space or something, but you still get a greenhouse out of the deal.
Could you just touch on the internal layouts in case the question was asking about that potentially?
Yeah, we don't do anything on the inside. We're providing like what we hope to be a very efficient, well-designed shell. The roof panels are R49. The wall panels are R32. The windows are now triple pane in the house portion. The inside is blank. It's for each homeowner to lay out on their own. We just have some example floor plans. I actually much prefer this one. The sunlight comes in and lights the space really well on the inside. And so in this particular layout, and this is just kind of a general idea, is your couch is in the sunlight, your eating tables in the sunlight, your kitchen's in the sunlight, the bedroom and the bathroom can be in the darker space. That's good layout. This one, your bedroom's getting the sun. And so if you want that, you can have it, but it's not a communal space. But again, it's totally flexible and homeowners are doing that on their own.
Can I ask you, so
no, only Miriam and Haley are allowed to ask me.
Well, I'm going to do it anyway. There were all these fires all over the place.
Okay,
yeah. How could we use the Vesta to build in fire-prone areas? Not that I'm sure we are not promising it will withstand any fire, but can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
So I have this slide here, not for this reason. That wasn't a law, but we weren't actually talking about fire today, but here we are. The panels on the Vesta are steel, poly, iso, and steel. It's 26 gauge steel. So the entire exterior of the Vesta is metal and glass. And so as far as a house is concerned, in a fire-prone area, sorry for There is, we don't have wood in the soffit. We don't have attic venting. We are, you wouldn't say it's fireproof, even though there are panels that can be fire rated that we can use. But this house, as it is, will not catch fire. Kind of can't.
Well, you could take fireproof windows. There are windows that can make that too. So I'm just saying, if you're interested to learn more about the fire protection aspect of this, or fireproofing your house, actually, this is the house you're seeing right there is in an area that could happen to have fires. Obviously, the trees are a little close to it. So they're not worried, particularly in this location, but that's something to consider.
And we live in a very fire-prone area. We're in Boulder, Colorado, and I live in the foothills. And I've seen fire come through in our foothills. I've been in the fires, and when you watch a fire, it's like a spark hits a roof, and the house is gone, or the spark hits something next to the siding. And so in Boulder County, and I think probably in California a lot now and throughout the country, there's a lot of like fireproof materials that are being required. And so building gets really expensive.
Yep.
You need exterior drywall as a fire break. You need to use hardy board, cement sidings, metal roofing. And when you start adding that all up, it gets really expensive to build. This kit is kind of that, not because we designed it for that, but that's a manufacturer that we use for our greenhouses. And so we used it for our house. And so it just kind of is a fire resistant house.
Yeah.
So this question is related. I have a question related to that. Someone was asking about, is it possible to use the Vesta design with different construction materials? They said example, straw bale, but I guess maybe like, any other material.
Well, what I would do, the idea here was affordability somewhat. So you can always do this custom, but what I would do is probably buy the frame, and then you could fill it with straw bale, and you could finish it with, plasters, and that way maybe we would supply the windows and the frame and some of the greenhouse stuff, and then you could fill it with straw bale. I mean, so there's flexibility here. We're, at Ceres, we're just trying to get people into cool houses with plants in them. So if that's a route we're going to take, then we're open to discussing that.
I think that's the thing about Ceres. It seems like over the years, all we do is custom. Everybody says, "Oh, I want your standard. I just want to have this and this and this change." So it's like, okay, well then here goes standard. And so we're used to custom on anything, which unfortunately drives the price up, right? And so it's all a question of use the standards. That's the cheapest. You want something extra, we are certainly willing to entertain it. And then engineering and work that has to go in there, maybe special materials, and that drives the price up. But at the end, you're still looking at something that's really affordable, because we have thought this through. When I say we, actually, Josh and Bill and Michael, our three musketeers that came up with this concept. It is thought through to be affordable. It doesn't have to be only that. If somebody wants it in gold, we're
happy to make it expensive.
Yeah, if you want to make it in gold, maybe we could make it in gold.
I'll leave that alone. Okay.
No.
Oh, someone mentioned about how does the Vesta deal with HVAC? I don't know if you want to talk really quick about
this. So the idea here again, and maybe if we have, this is, I'll go to the drawings in a second, but we're highly insulated and the panels wrap around the frame. So this is a no thermal bridge house. If it's hot outside, it's not hot inside. There's no transfer of heat. The roof extends to create shade in these windows in the middle of summer. And the greenhouse roof is solid here to create shade, mostly in these for the summer. In the spring, early spring, late fall, winter, the sun's low enough that the sun comes in. So the house is self-cooling, self-heating, just based on design. That's a passive house concept. We're also then from the greenhouse, because the greenhouse takes direct sunlight, if it warms, and we have a smart controller in this house that it reads temperature and humidity levels in the greenhouse, same in the house. If the house has heat, or if the greenhouse has heat and the house is calling for heat, stage one of heating can be these windows open with a motor. And I actually just shot a video because I was in this house 2 weeks ago. The house was 60. I opened the windows. It was pretty early in the morning, and 75-degree air just started coming in, and it was really awesome. So that's kind of the connection between the two. This is an exterior rated wall between the greenhouse and the house. We assume that the greenhouse, you might open it up and freeze it in the winter, who knows. And then with the house itself, you can just use a mini split or whatever, radiant floor heat or whatever it is that you want to heat and cool it. We also have motors on these upper awning windows. So in a well-built house, we live in a place where it's cool in the evenings and hot during the days in the summer. So in the early morning, you open the house up, you can let cool air in, and then you shut the house down. You close all the windows, and the house will hold the coolness.
Yeah.
And that's your air conditioning for the day, is just the house is cool. And then at the end of the day, when it starts to cool outside, you can open these upper windows and open some lower windows, and any heat that's accumulated exits the house just because hot air is up high, and it leaves.
I think you had in the back of this house, you also have like a shed, kind of you have a place that you could put other equipment, right? I mean, there's a mechanical room. I mean, you need that for water distribution. For hot water, for everything that you need a mechanical room, and that can be or integrated into the design of the floor plan inside the building, or make it on the outside of the building as a lean-to shed. That's definitely feasible.
Yep. And just quick transition over to house and house. This building is going to get very hot in the summer, or can. And so what you see here is an automated roof vent. So ideally this is on there's a thermostat. We're reading temperatures. This is open. You have an open door here. You might have some automated vents on the side that open when you need intake air. So you can let heat out of this thing. And then this one also has a rack and pinion, or
just a shade system.
Shade system. Yeah. Okay. So this shade system will open and close as needed to both create cooling in the summer, so it shades the whole greenhouse. And in the winter, it can close to retain heat. So it does both. It's an energy curtain, a little bit like a blanket, and a shade cloth, depending on what the requirements are for the interior space.
What about people living in like really humid, like Louisiana or Kentucky, like somewhere really humid?
Well, is this a worthwhile concept in Louisiana? I'm not sure.
I mean, generally, there are ways to reduce humidity inside a greenhouse. And in those spaces, the US South, usually tropical islands, etc. To do that is a little difficult if you want to control the climate completely to whatever, let's say 25 degrees Celsius or 70 or 80 degrees Fahrenheit and 50% humidity. That is difficult to achieve in some areas, and so there it is definitely feasible doing it. It takes energy to do that. And so we do this for some of our high class glass houses for growing plants where that was necessary. And so that is something that we're very familiar with. It does take energy, and that energy then can come from solar or other places if you want to be sustainable in the process. It can certainly be designed, and so that when you walk outside of your house, the temperature can be 25 degrees Celsius and whatever, 80 degrees Fahrenheit and 50% humidity. We can absolutely do that. That's something that we do as a standard to many of our greenhouses. It's when you look it up on our website, I think it's the sun chamber that we describe about how to do that. So Haley can probably put something about the sun chamber into the chat. It is just a way to create a more beautiful environment on the outside, which is similar to, I think if you want to look up some really cool greenhouses, on my travels, I went to Singapore. There's a place called the Gardens at the Bay. An unbelievable greenhouse paradise that just so happened in a very hot and moist climate. You go into the greenhouse, it's Mediterranean, it's literally 75 degrees in there with 50% humidity. And that's absolutely feasible. It's just the question of how much energy do you want to spend to do that.
Right. And so the idea here is with this image, this is kind of a very lightly controlled greenhouse. So what the inputs are: open the roof vent, which takes electricity for 3 minutes, tiny motor, barely anything. Open an intake vent, same thing. Close the shade system. Again, it takes 3 or 4 minutes of electricity, and then it's in a closed position. So this is more or less a low input, no
Absolutely.
operating cost greenhouse.
Yeah.
And when the outside ambient conditions are hot, humid, we can't use them as a resource because that's what you're trying to get away from. And so instead of opening vents, we actually close everything. It becomes a sealed structure. And like Marc was saying, we'll add ideally like a kind of larger scale, but still relatively efficient heat pump that's designed for it to cool the space. You're kind of using air conditioning to now cool your whole yard.
Right. And
we do it mostly for commercial grows. People want to grow lettuce in Texas in the summer. It's not possible. We can cool a greenhouse, but it's conceptually the same, but operationally more expensive.
That's hot and humid. Then it is hot and dry, which is Arizona.
Yeah, Southwest.
The Southwest,
the whole West.
So in those kind of places, and if you have water, you can basically cool your greenhouse around your house using water to evaporate. Now, I know the West doesn't have all that much water, but if you do have water, instead of using electricity, you can basically cool that space with some shade cloth and some evaporating water to make it really a very pleasant 70 degrees inside the greenhouse. Not a problem at all. And that takes very little energy. It does take some water that you're evaporating. So you need to choose whether or not you're feeling better about using some electricity or some water to create the best possible climate that you're looking for.
Hey guys, I just want to jump in. We only have 10 minutes to go, and I think we have a lot of questions. But before we get to that, I just wanted to make sure that we touched on the glazing of the greenhouse portion, or just glazing in general, I guess. Let's just have a quick conversation about that. Yeah.
So you'll notice that like all of these are glass, and you can see right through them, and it looks amazing. And that's why they're glass. When we're doing more of a production greenhouse, the Vesta's roof, and I'm going to show you a picture. This is polycarbonate. It's more affordable, but it's less beautiful. And if you're living in the space, you probably want to be able to see in, out. And so we don't use polycarbonate for that. We do have another material that we use, which is called ETFE, and it's a very clear film. And it is maybe somewhat similar in cost to some glass. And that might be an option for these things, but
especially in hail-prone area where glass is a problem.
Yeah,
so
glass can break,
ETFE can be used. Then that's the greatest resistance towards hail damage.
But because it's a film and it installs very tight, it's loud when it rains, like a drum.
You can hear it,
Yes,
definitely.
it's loud. And so, and all greenhouses are. I mean, there's no way around it that when it rains in these things, it's going to be loud.
You hear it. Yeah.
Even if it's drizzling, you're like, whoa, it's a huge rainstorm. And then you go outside, it's just drizzling. But that's the feel of a greenhouse. And so glass is really what people use. And I think we agree it's the best solution in most cases. And then we have options for glass. So Marc mentioned we're doing a project in Kuwait where it's super hot. We're using a double pane infrared blocking glass. So it actually lets in light without heat, because heat is the problem in that project. In a lot of the other projects, I think depending on what the goal is, single pane glass, and it's tempered, especially in the roof, it's tempered so that if it breaks, it doesn't kill people. But single pane glass might be just right. It's the most affordable, and it's not highly insulating, but it does create a different environment, which is really, I think, a buffer is what most people are after. But if it's really cold and people are trying to create a very specific environment in the greenhouse, then we can go to double pane glass, which is just more insulating. And so if they're adding heat, they have to add less heat.
Yeah. And we've seen the pictures of the glass with the solar panels in them by itself. So you can actually make electricity out of the new roof that you're having, which, by the way, I think when you build structures with that in there are actually tax deductions, and
because it's part of your solar system.
Because it's part of your solar system. So the attachment of the solar panels to the structure is you get subsidies / tax deductions for that. So you can actually offset that greenhouse with those costs.
And this works as power production, obviously, but also shade. So if you look on the ground, I mean, there's, I don't know, a third of the light is coming through that panel.
Yep.
Hey, I just want to make sure we cover this question because have about 7 minutes left, but I think it's pretty important to talk about how to deal with condensation. There's a few people talking about mold and like insects. Just, when you're attaching a greenhouse to your house, these concerns come up.
Yeah. So with this, you need to manage, you build the house, the exterior walls are exterior walls. So you still have screens on the windows, you build it to deal with the environment still, even though it can be less environment, maybe no snow, maybe no rain, it's still UV, there's still gonna be humidity, things like that. The roof vent, depending on how you're controlling it, with our controller, we can control humidity somewhat depending on outside conditions by cracking the vent a little bit. In this thing, depending on how warm it is, in the winter, at night, you're going to get condensation.
Yeah.
And the greenhouse can potentially control it. A lot of these greenhouses can have like a gutter on the tracks that can catch the condensation, send it down to the gutter, and then it brings it down. In the Vesta.
Hold on for a second before you go away from that. I just want to make sure. So there is condensation. The condensation will be on the glass because that's the coolest part about the whole building. And so the condensation will not be in the building itself. It will be on the glass, and then it will literally be caught. And then from there, it can be collected as, the rainwater, even though it's condensed water, or it can be drained to the outside. Either way is fine. So I think your house can be much easier. The design of the house is still much easier because you don't actually get mold, etc. We are very good as a company to kind of look at these moisture profiles in greenhouses. That's what we do for greenhouses where people grow plants. And so, when these things come up, we're happy to look at that and say, okay, let's talk about what is it that you want to achieve inside, and how do we do that? That's kind of a specialty of what we do. And so, if there are questions about that, that can be handled. I know in the biosphere, there were issues. If somebody wants to look that up too, very cool concept. They live in there permanently. There were some pests that were super happy that they're living in a paradise there where the temperature and humidity basically don't ever change. Now, that will or can happen. And now is the question, okay, how do you deal with that, right? I mean, people in the South don't have freezing condition where things freeze all the time. And so you need to be mindful of that, and that can all be handled. There can be natural ways of dealing with that, how you're doing it on the outside. Obviously there are chemicals. So that is something that we're aware of, and we feel like, just like in many places that are naturally not freezing, etc., those are things that can be handled. It takes a little bit of effort, but not terrible.
Yeah, and then I'll just jump in this Vesta type concept, and I'll show you one more really fast. This is an exterior wall, full exterior wall. And so the wall is constructed to deal with temperature, humidity, all those things. These are exterior windows. So when you close them, the greenhouse is a separate space. The greenhouse has its own controls. We can control humidity in the greenhouse on its own, either with a dehumidifier or with exhaust fans. And so there are ways to deal with that. And I was just going to show you a project that we're working on. This project, the wall between the house and the greenhouse will have to be built to deal with those things. So whether it's, passive style, I believe this is going to be a passive house. So actually with so much insulation, you don't get condensation the way we're used to in traditional construction. But we do take that into account as we're designing these structures.
Just really quick, because you're showing some concepts. Can you people are curious, like what capabilities Ceres can, like design? Are there, you showed the render of the greenhouse, the house attached to the greenhouse, like wrapped around it. You said it was a concept. Like, what is Ceres capable of at this point with these like concepts that aren't Vesta?
Yeah, I mean, we are working on this project right now. We are working on this project right now. And we will decide what is in our scope and what isn't. We're going to provide the entire structure and glass for this, and the client will then build out the inside of the house and any of the details. And so that is a case-by-case basis. This is a newer thing for us, like this in particular.
Well, I think I think people need to know we do not want to be the architects that design the house. We want to help an architect that has local connections, a local builder who knows their building department and all of that. We are here to help architects and builders, and of course the homeowners, to make that the most affordable, most beautiful looking structure that also works. So that's our expertise. It's not to figure out how your house is supposed to look like. That's not. We have fully licensed architects, but that's not really what we want to do. We want to focus on the greenhouse aspect of your dreams, not the house itself. Even though we may have some suggestions about how you may want to design the house, but we are here to really help the architects and builders.
It is 1:00, so we just want to wrap things up here and thank everyone for joining. If you do have any questions, we will be sending a follow-up email with all of our information, or you can jot down some information from this slide. The recording will be available. We want to just thank everyone for attending. We hope that you got something out of it, and just stay tuned for the next webinar. Probably in about a month, but we'll send an email out with the specifics for that. See y'all next time.